Most of the world's islands have been well explored, many of them on our channel, but there are some that remain a deep mystery. Islands that have inexplicably appeared, leaving scientists baffled. Dangerous, top-secret islands that have been abandoned or destroyed. Islands completely cut off from the world, and some with terrifying pasts that would give you nightmares. All of these 10 strange and mysterious islands fall into these categories, so I invite you to stick around and explore them with me. Number 10. Socotra Island. Very few people study or are even aware of this island off the coast of Yemen, which looks like an alien planet. Because of its remote location, temperature extremes, and dry conditions, its flora is not only endangered, but a third of its plant life cannot be found anywhere else on Earth. Things like plants that look like upside-down turnips, red sap from trees, earning the name dragon's blood tree, which only has leaves at the very tips of its branches. But the real mystery can be found in the island's large limestone caves, which are home to the only mammals on this island, bats. Messages in many languages have been carved into the cave walls, and researchers believe they belong to sailors who stayed on Socotra between 81 and 6. While 70% of the island has been set aside as a national park, there are approximately 40,000 residents on the island who all have DNA possessed by no other people on Earth, and many researchers believe that the Garden of Eden was originally located in Socotra. Number 9. Floating Eye Island. Located in Argentina between the cities of Campana and Zarate, this tiny island is perfectly shaped into a circle with a diameter of 120 meters or 390 feet. And then it has a round landmass inside of it, giving the channel the appearance of a crescent moon. So the resulting image of the island and channel gives the appearance of an eye, hence the nickname. The eye floats and rotates on its axis, but this incredible phenomena wasn't discovered until 2016, when a filmmaker was scouting for locations for a science fiction film, appropriately enough, and he was so wowed by this unusual image that he scrapped the film and made a documentary on this special island instead. Number 8. Doxa Island. Now let's go to the Adriatic Sea near Dubrovnik, Croatia, to this island that was home to the Franciscan monastery of St. Sabina for many centuries, from 1281 to the 1800s. Sadly, the island slowly began to be used less and less after the closing of the monastery, but it wasn't until 1944, at the height of World War II, that the island was truly deserted. It was at this time that authorities came to Dubrovnik and arrested 53 men suspected of being Nazi sympathizers, including the mayor of Dubrovnik and the local priest. And this is where Doxa enters the picture, because the prisoners were then taken to this island and executed without trial. It wasn't until 2009, when 2 mass graves were unearthed and DNA samples were taken, that many of the bodies were identified and received a proper burial in 2010, 66 years after their executions. But of course now there are ghost stories of the victims roaming the island crying out for justice. The island has been for sale by the current owner for over 5 years, but no matter how low the price drops, unsurprisingly, not a single buyer has shown interest. Number 7. Earthquake Island. In September of 2013, a very powerful 7.8 magnitude earthquake in Pakistan killed 39 people and destroyed homes. But it also created something, an island to be exact, which did not exist before the earthquake. According to Pakistan's meteorological department, locals reported witnessing the creation of this small island measuring 330 feet or 100 meters long and 30 feet high. Formed near the port of Gwadar, officials believe that the earthquake buckled land under the sea, which in turn created the island, but they're still investigating the cause of this remarkable island creation. Number 6. Lazaretto Nuovo. Situated at the entrance of the lagoon around Venice, Italy, sits this island, which served as a monastery in medieval times, but was later designated in 1468 as a quarantine area for ships approaching Venice in order to protect the city from plague. It continued this way until the 1700s, when the quarantine facilities were abandoned and the island became a military base. The Italian army again abandoned it in 1975, and it suffered years of neglect neglect, and people were wary of creating anything on Lazaretto Nuovo. Finally, the Italian Ministry of Arts and Culture decided to turn it into a cultural museum site, so all tourists to Venice can now explore this mysterious island with its intriguing past for themselves. Number 5. Partridge Island. And now to Canada, where you'll find this island off the coast of St. John Harbor in New Brunswick. This was another island that was originally designated to be a quarantine station back in 1830, specifically when immigrants would arrive. They would stay here upon their arrival in Canada to make sure they would not spread shipborne diseases on land. It was an especially busy place in 1847 during the Great Famine of Ireland, when 2,500 Irish immigrants were quarantined on this island. But the story gets much worse and sadder from here. Newly arrived immigrants were subjected to kerosene showers followed by hot showers, and sadly, many were sick with diseases such as yellow fever, measles, and cholera, and those who died from these diseases were buried on the island in a mass grave, which stood out from the rest of the surrounding lawn due to its intense green nourished by the bones. So sad. The island was completely closed in 1941, and this truly mysterious island has remained uninhabited ever since. Number 4. North Brother Island. This 20-acre island is located in the East River of New York City, yet most visitors and even locals know nothing about it, as it is a protected nesting area and therefore off-limits to the public. But beyond this, it has quite a shocking past, which lasted 130 years. Once again, this island was a quarantine facility opened by Riverside Hospital in 1885 as a refuge for smallpox patients. Later, the hospital began receiving patients with other communicable diseases, including typhoid, where the infamous Typhoid Mary was involuntarily housed for 20 years until she died in 1938. The hospital closed in 1942, but the buildings continued to be used as veterans housing and later as a rehab center for drug addicts. Sadly, reports of abuse and corruption caused the facility to close in 1963, and it remained that way for many decades. Then in 2007, the city of New York purchased it, but the island remains untouched, with its buildings still left in ruins, and many believing North Brother Island to be haunted by the many souls who suffered and died on it. Number 3. Diego Garcia. Lying in the Indian Ocean is this kind of U-shaped 17-square-mile atoll, which has thick tropical jungles and pretty white sand beaches. It was home to 2,000 inhabitants until they were forcibly relocated by the British government between 1968 and 1973, so that the U.S. could build a naval base here as a strategic military location between the Middle East, East Africa, and Southeast Asia. It was then used to stage air support operations during the 1991 Gulf War, the 2002 Afghanistan War, and the Iraq War. Very little is known about the island now, as it is a very top-secret military location, to say the least, but this restricted island is believed to be the site of a secret U.S. prison camp, although American authorities have denied this allegation. So it will remain a mystery what really happens on Diego Garcia Island. Number 2. Palmyra Atoll. 1,000 miles south of Hawaii lies this territory island owned by the United States, which is said to be officially uninhabited. During World War II, the U.S. military built an airstrip here, which has fallen into disrepair, although it is still used once in a while for supply runs. All sounds pretty boring and mysterious, right? Well, the atoll was formed by a growing reef, which caused many shipwrecks to happen on this island, and one of them is said to have resulted in a shipwreck of a vessel filled with gold. And if that wasn't enough intrigue, in 1974, a double murder occurred here, that of a sailing couple, and the story was so shocking that it resulted in a book and miniseries detailing the events and mysteries surrounding their deaths, and the sea will tell. Not surprisingly, the island is believed to be haunted by the thousands of sailors who were shipwrecked here, but I'm sure there will be some who will attempt to explore in the hope of some buried treasure. The most well-known mystery island, Easter Island, which was home to the Rapa Nui, the lost people who left an infinite number of questions behind. How did these islanders live or even arrive here? How were they able to farm thousands of miles from any continent? But the biggest question of all, how did they carve and move the island's 900 statues around the island? Made from volcanic materials, studies have shown that the stone was harvested and carved by stoneworkers on site by the volcanic materials, completing including the face and front, and then the stone block was lifted upright using ropes and levers to complete the back, and the statue would then be transported across the island on sleds or rollers. These massive 13-foot tall statues weigh 14 tons, and it took many hundreds of people to complete each one, and their population was believed to be between 2,000 to 3,000 at its peak. Researchers believe that raiders kidnapped the Rapa Nui to sell as slaves, which reduced their population from thousands to barely 100 inhabitants, and then diseases and fighting amongst themselves wiped out the rest, leaving their origin as secret and mysterious as the island itself. So as sad and tragic as many of these islands are, it's interesting to see how many places around the world are yet to be explored and understood, which is what travel is all about, right? Please give a thumbs up, that would mean a lot to me, and as always, I can't wait to see you back right here on Passport Pages.